Hold your fire! I'm a human!
Secret of Mana is a game that, believe it or not, I never played through until now. I played it as a kid on SNES, which is an emulator for those that don't know. Never really got very far, as you could probably expect. The childhood gaming ADD kicked in and I just never touched it again. Over the years, I obviously heard about how great it was, legendary, a staple on the SNES, and so forth. However, in recent years, I also saw that there was lots of criticisms regarding Secret of Mana, which was surprising to me, because overall the narrative growing up was that it was just legendary. Well, what a better way to find out than to play it for myself, right? Secret of Mana, also known as Seiken Densetsu 2, is an action role-playing game developed and published by Squaresoft, released in North America on October 3rd of 1983. Funny enough, when I started my playthrough, it was actually October 3rd, and it was completely unplanned, so that was pretty cool. So technically, this game is actually Secret of Mana 2, as the first Seiken Densetsu game was actually the Final Fantasy Adventure on the Nintendo Game Boy. I played through and reviewed it some years ago, and earlier this year I also did a long play with commentary that you could also view on my channel. I'll leave all those links in the pinned comment descriptions below. The brief intro to the story of Secret of Mana is as follows. 3 boys from the village of Podos are clowning around near a waterfall. The one boy, who ends up being the main character of the game, falls down and finds a rusty sword embedded in a stone. He then pulls said sword from the stone and accidentally unleashes monsters everywhere. In classic JRPG fashion, the boy is then cast out of the village of Podos and left to fend on his own. A callback to the first game is seen rather early, as a knight named Gemma notices the blade and tells our hero, in this case his name was Bits, that he must visit the 8 mana temples to reinvigorate the sword, to give it its fullest brilliance, slay the beast, and quell the uprising of the Empire. There's plenty of story to go around, and plenty for you to experience along the way, in all of its glory. Before breaking down the technical aspects of the game, I want to focus a bit on some of the cool innovations that don't necessarily fit into the categories entirely. Secret of Mana features a fairly lengthy and expansive plot, with some storylines following you through the entire game. It's interesting enough, and at times it could even tug a bit on your heartstrings. I wouldn't say it was the most invigorating story that I've ever experienced, but it was enough to keep me interested all the way through, and I guess with that being said, it did its job. Perhaps the most interesting thing regarding Secret of Mana is something that I've experienced somewhere before. Oh yeah, the birth of the famed ring command menu and real-time battle system that could be customizable with AI settings for how your teammates approach battles, as well as obviously swapping between your teammates with the select button. So where have I seen this before? Well, one of my favorite SNES games that came out a few years later, also by Squaresoft, but a different dev team. That game was Secret of Evermore. So yeah, if you've played Secret of Evermore or Secret of Mana and then go to the other, you will notice that the engines are basically the same, with obviously Secret of Mana predating Secret of Evermore and being a little less refined. Really, the only differences regarding the topic are in Secret of Mana you have 3 characters in your party instead of 2, and in Secret of Evermore your magic system revolves around ingredients for alchemy instead of straight up MP like we have here in Secret of Mana. Now, getting into the technical aspects is where Secret of Mana shines. For the most part, the graphics of Secret of Mana are amazing. The color palette is extremely vibrant and bright, radiant greens, wonderful pinks, light blues, yellows, and just scenery that grabs your eye at every corner. You'll feel fully immersed in this immense fantasy world. The sprites of the heroes are memorable, the bosses are daunting and foreboding, especially down the stretch, and the differing areas in this fantasy world are well constructed, unique, and the SNES graphical engine helps build upon the foundation that was present in the Final Fantasy Adventure in a big way. Musically, Secret of Mana is also a top-notch production. Without doing research, I could tell that Nobuo Uematsu did not create the soundtrack, and I soon found out that the composer was Hiroki Kikuta, most notable for Romantic Saga, Kudelka, Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana aka Seiken Densetsu 3. Of course, he also composed a bunch of other games, but the ones mentioned to me were the most standout. While the soundtrack adds very well to the fantasy element and world of Secret of Mana, it's also quite unique at times where you will get some groovy soundtracks with some interesting offbeats and even double bass. Not only that, but Kikuta also nailed the atmospheric side of things where, most notably to me, the combination of the graphics and sound in the Ice Palace and the surrounding areas are legendary. It is truly one of the more relaxing areas that I could think of in the 16-bit era, and that's great considering it's also a wonderful place to grind. Unfortunately, this soundtrack isn't perfect. Well, kind of. I mean, the tracks themselves are freaking great, and I guess this sort of just factors into the glitchiness, which is one of the more major strikes against Secret of Mana, but in moments of intensive battles, so I'm assuming when there's lots of swipes and sprites on the screen, the audio tracks will experience tons of interruptions and even moments of just silence, which kind of ruins the mood in some of the areas that otherwise have amazing tunes. The controls. To me, this is probably the weakest spot technically for Secret of Mana, and this is coming from a Secret of Evermore veteran. To be frank, the ring menuing is clunky. It was in Secret of Evermore, and it's obviously even more so and then some in Secret of Mana, considering this is an earlier version of the game engine and you have one more teammate to manage. You will oftentimes find yourself misclicking, selecting the wrong character, activating spells at the wrong time which are just not executed, again touching on the glitchy aspect of the game, and it can be a royal pain in the keister to navigate your party through close quarters as the AI isn't that great and they tend to get stuck on objects and walls or in battle quite frequently. This then forces you to swap characters constantly and it's just not very smooth. However, it's not all bad. Melee combat is decent enough, the way you run is fairly smooth, and you can actually push NPCs that are in your way. You could also push enemies around to set up your teammates for better battle position. The whole pushing aspect is actually a very underrated aspect of the controls for this game. Just thinking back to Dragon Warrior for example on the NES, when somebody gets in your way and you really want them to move, you have to wait for them. Secret of Mana, you can just push them around. Lastly, the gameplay and fun factor. Now, I touched on lots of the core mechanics and gimmicks of the game, but there's still some more to discuss. Secret of Mana offers a wonderful variety of weapons to use between your party. Gloves, swords, axes, spears, whips, bows, boomerangs, and javelins. The more you use your weapons, the more the weapon skill levels go up, unlocking better charge level attacks. Also throughout your adventure you'll find various orbs that can be given to Watts the Dwarven Blacksmith to upgrade your respective weapons. Depending on your playstyle or which characters you want to use, your builds might differ. For example, I chose to use the boy most of the game, and for lore reasons I wanted to give him the sword. However, at about the midway point I gave that up and started using stronger weapons like the axe until the endgame where the sword became the ultimate weapon. The magic system also works in a similar fashion to the weapon leveling system in that the more spells you use, the more they level up. The sprite and the girl are the magic users in the party, and as you acquire new elementals, new spells get unlocked. Primarily, the sprite has attacking spells and the girl is more of a buffer/healer. Early on in the game when your currency and magic is at a minimum, it can actually be pretty tough, but the further you go along, the more magic you acquire, the more areas of great grinding that you find, you can become pretty overpowered quickly. A great grind combo for magic is when the sprite learns Magic Absorb. You could essentially then just start spamming spells, refilling your MP with Magic Absorb, and going off the rails with magic power. And believe me, you will want to do this as much as possible because many bosses are weak to certain types of magic. And unfortunately for me, I didn't level up everything like I should have, and the endgame was actually pretty difficult and grindy. Now don't get me wrong, I didn't die or anything, but some of the fights were very long and hard. That's what she said. To wrap back around to the fun factor, said mechanics will keep you on your toes and make you want to grind up your weapons, magic, and levels, as well as currency so you can go gear up appropriately through your town and vendor explorations. All the while you'll be unraveling the great stories at hand featuring the services of wonderful friendly NPCs and a somewhat lengthy group of diabolical recurring villains. There's plenty to explore, especially when you acquire the services of Flammy, who serves as your airship of sorts in Secret of Mana and unleashes Dat Mode 7. Oh, I'd also be remiss if I did not mention the hilarity of the Cannon travel system by the way of the Cannon Brothers. Basically it exists to just fast travel you for a small fee before you have Flammy. I mean, look at this, it's great. And honestly guys, in the end, Secret of Mana is just fun. It's a damn fun game. Completing Secret of Mana was a fulfillment of a childhood memory for me, and after experiencing the journey for myself, I could totally see why it's as revered as it is. Sure, there are some glitches and limitations to the game, but when you really factor in the story, the gameplay, overall fun factor, graphics, music, all that kind of stuff, it's a top tier package for the SNES. This game was a gigantic step above the Final Fantasy Adventure on the Game Boy, which, by the way, I love, and I couldn't be happier and more eager to get into Secret of Mana 2, aka Seiken Densetsu 3, aka Trials of Mana. I stand with the crowd that heralds Secret of Mana as one of the top tier RPGs of yesteryear. As such, I give Secret of Mana an 8.5 out of 10. This game is highly recommended to any RPG/JRPG fan, especially if you haven't played it yet, and if you've already played it, give it a spin again. Darkness sweeps the troubled land as Mana's power fades. People await a hero who will wield the sword. Now it's your turn. If you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. I do my best to reply to all comments on all videos, and if you want to check out more Secret of Mana content, or the Final Fantasy adventure, check out the pinned comment or description below. Take care.